Hello and welcome to this quick video about the setup for the Dolphin Pro that I got in here. Now, for those of you that have been watching for a long time, you'll have known that I'm a big fan of the original Dolphin and I was quite excited when the Dolphin Pro came out. However, I, like quite a few other reviewers and owners, had a little bit of trouble getting it flying as beautifully as the version 1. However, I think we're finally getting to a point here where it flies reasonably well, and the setup has been something that's been played with for probably about 3 months at this point. I need to say a massive thank you to my flying buddy Adam, who's done the vast majority of this work. I passed on the model to him and he's been tinkering with it to get it into the point where it is now, where it's actually flying okay. And it's flying well enough that I feel comfortable to kind of share the fruits of his labour for all of the setup. Now, there has been a number of questions from other people around whether or not things like the motor alignment is correct. Let me show you some images of what it looks like on the one here, looking at it from the side but also from the top. And hopefully you can see here that on the motor mount here, the motor is kind of parallel, looking at it from the side to the back of the plane from the foam, but similarly looking at it from the top, it's parallel as well. So there's no up angle or any of that shenanigans. I have seen other photos from other people where the motor is at a weird angle. So it appears that, particularly in the first lots that were sent out, there was occasionally variances in the motor angle, and that's why, you know, people like Andrew Newton and others were having to add shims to try and get rid of some weird and wacky tendencies. I think I was just lucky. Mine is pretty neutral and it flies nicely like that out of the box. So check the motor angle on yours. Second thing to talk about is the fact that the flight controller isn't set level. It is actually rotated by 180 degrees, so that's a standard kind of setup. You'll notice this if you have one of the bind and fly or the return to home versions. The other thing as well is that when you look at it in the board alignment tab, you'll notice that it's got a 5-degree offset as well. So why has it got a minus 5-degree offset? Well, that means that when it's actually flying, when the board feels level, the nose is actually stuck up in the air. I didn't spot how much of an angle it needs, and this is pretty typical, right? Most planes need between 2 to 5 degrees kind of nose up in order to maintain their altitude at cruise throttle. This one seems to need quite a bit, and Atom RC obviously figured this out for theirs because they've actually done it by setting an offset on the flight controller so that the wing is actually flying in that nose up attitude. A slightly odd way to do it, not the way that I would do it, but in the flying that we've done here, in addition to that 5 degrees, there's also another 0.744, I think it is, in terms of the fixed wing offset that's had to be set as well. That's been done by the auto trim function in iNav, and now it flies pretty straight and maintains its altitude. So if you are doing it yourself and you're not doing the board alignment, which is the way I would do it, I would give yourself a nice 6-degree of fixed wing offset so that that nose is up. If you don't have that in, you're going to struggle to launch. It's always going to be diving towards the ground. So that's the other big tip. In terms of the control surfaces, well, this is pretty straightforward. In the V-tail, have those neutral. In the ailerons, have them up probably 3 to 4 millimeters. That's all you need, and that is where iNav have trimmed the control surfaces on the one here. So let me jump on the bench and show you what it looks like for all the other bits and pieces, how the mixing's done and so on in iNav itself. So here we are connected on the bench. Let me do a whistle stop tour of the configuration. So that is how it looks like. So it is set up as a V-tail, and that's how Adam's been flying it. Calibration data isn't in the diff all in the dump that I'm sharing as part of this video, so that it doesn't overwrite yours. I'm also not going to include things like the on-screen display and the modes either, just the configuration stuff. Like, for example, the mixer. Mixer is a little bit interesting, but the way it works is that these are elevons, and the stabilized yaw out on the V-tail is there with just a touch of elevator for a little bit more authority. So the way that he's got it set up here is that outputs 1 and 2 are actually stabilized pitch and roll. So they are elevons, and those are those two control surfaces out in the wings, pretty standard stuff. We can see here that 3 and 4 are the V-tails, and most of it is stabilized yaw, but he's added in just a smidgen of stabilized pitch as well, just to help with the pitch authority. The tail is so far back from the center of lift that any kind of aggressive pitch movements back there will cause it to be quite snappy, and that was something that I found when I was playing with it. Outputs, pretty standard stuff. He's got the ESC set to standard. We could probably set that for D-shot and it would still be fine. And then there is a little bit of trimming here in some of the servos. So again, as I talked about in the introduction, the elevons are actually up slightly. They're proud above the rear of the wing by about the width of the elevon, and the tail is pretty neutral. So that's pretty standard stuff. Ports are configured as you would expect. MSP display port is out on UART 5, GPS is UART 4. Configuration, again, be careful with this because in the configuration, the way that Adam and I fly is we permanently enable launch mode. So as soon as you arm the model, it is going to start beeping and the throttle is going to be under the control of launch mode unless you move the controls. Advanced tuning, we haven't done an awful lot with this. The auto launches are working really nicely. The angle that we've set for the launch with the motor as it appears at the back, where it's pretty much level, both looking from the side and looking from the top, is the launch throttle is 1800. This is of course running on 6S. The idle is 1400, but the climb angle is 20. And that's a nice gentle climb away under power. 1800 is lows with that big prop. Everything else is pretty much as you would expect. There's no real big surprises with this. But with this configuration, the plane is flying and responding nicely. I definitely recommend though, when you apply the diff all and the dump, be aware that it doesn't include the calibration data, it doesn't include the modes data, and I'm also going to take out the on-screen display data as well, because otherwise it's going to overwrite how you have yours configured. So a massive thank you again to Adam for taking the time to persevere with the Dolphin Pro and get it flying well. Again, I think there are potential issues with some of the Dolphin Pros out there, and hopefully Atom RC have fixed this by now, having various motor angles. Be aware of that and check yours if you're having trouble getting it to fly. The mixing on the control surfaces, we tried all kinds of things here and Adam eventually kind of figured it out. I think you could probably also take away the pitch from the V-tail and you probably wouldn't notice that much of a difference. And finally, the only other thing I'll say is the central gravity as marked on the wings does appear to be okay. I would always go slightly forward of that just for your maiden flight. But for me, the big tips here are set it up as ailerons with a V-tail with yaw. Have it so that the offset is 6 degrees up, and you're probably going to be most of the way to having it flying well. Thank you for watching my video. Check out the playlist, and adding Painless 360 to your search terms will help you find my content. If you haven't done so already, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps a lot. You can support the time I spend here answering questions and helping others by using the links in the video description.